Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. On today's video, we're going to be making an MBTI and Enneagram analysis on BioShock's first villain, Dr. Steinman, who is an insane plastic surgeon who mutilates his patients because he wants to make them beautiful.
I want to make them beautiful.
Just let that sink in. He mutilates people because he wants to make them beautiful. That's a red flag. But I digress. He's also the first antagonist Jack encounters within Rapture. So that begs the question, how did Dr. Steinman get that way? Well, to find out, we'll be looking into his life before his insanity. And according to the wiki, before moving to Rapture, J.S. Steinman was a well-respected medical professional at the Benjamin Church Medical College. He had quite a successful career as an orthopedic surgeon, but had his highest accolades within the field of plastic surgery. In fact, he loved it so much that he revolutionized the field by inventing new techniques. And Steinman's innovations did not go unnoticed. He caught the attention of Andrew Ryan, who would invite him to move to Rapture, where he could practice cosmetic surgery without petty morals. This allowed Steinman to further innovate and set new industry highs within cosmetic surgery. We'll be exploring this backstory further within the functions. Dominant function, extroverted intuition. Dr. Steinman is an intriguing example of an unhealthy NE user who often loops with this tertiary function. He also takes his stereotypical NE traits and amplifies them to extremes. We'll be reviewing his actions and ideas within both his backstory and within the game to back up this statement. And speaking of his backstory, we'll be continuing that now. As Steinman settled in Rapture, he quickly became bored and wanted to further innovate to avoid said boredom. And luckily for him, Rapture acquired an unknown technology called Atom. Mr. Steinman saw an opportunity and wanted to experiment with it by using it on his patients. This proved fruitful. Steinman once again revolutionized his field and turned plastic surgery into an art form. This led to his obsession with the idea of beauty and what it truly means to become beautiful, inside and out. To fuel himself to achieve his goals, he abused both Atom and cocaine. It didn't take long before these substances started to affect his mental health. Steinman may have not known it, but he developed a severe form of schizophrenia, and not long after, he began to have conversations with Aphrodite. This is where we see his NE function go out of control. He starts thinking of all the possible ways he can make people beautiful, and theorizes about the idea of beauty. Why do humans have 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 ears?
There's some law that says we must.
We should change that. It's ugly.
Ugly!
I think you guys know where this is gonna go. It's about to take a really ugly turn real fast. This desire to see what was possible with Atom was so high that he purchased the bodies of rogue splicers from Rapture's constabulary so he can practice his art on living subjects. There was a bonus if they were paralyzed, since Steinman wouldn't have to administer anesthesia to keep them still. During these sessions, he would mutilate their bodies and disfigure their faces. This was all done on the quest of creating new art, the new idea of beauty, which is a direct reflection of his NE function. It wants to innovate, create something new, something different. Even if it doesn't make sense or practically work, it's still a new idea.
But is there not something better? What if now it is not my skill that fails me, but my imagination?
And that wraps up this segment. We'll be seeing more NE examples within his auxiliary function, since he heavily relies on it, and they obviously work together. His auxiliary function is introverted feeling. I know, big surprise, wow, an artist. Steinman may have healthily used his FI function before moving to Rapture. However, that quickly changed while he lived within Rapture. He was now part of a society that disregards petty morality, and as a consequence of abusing that system, his FI usage became toxic and unhealthy. Even though Steinman has been losing his mind for quite a while, he always did his best and tried to respect what his clients wanted, albeit with a unique flair that he perceived as beautiful. Think of it like this. You go to a hairdresser for a haircut. They ask you what you want. You ask them to trim your hair, and they do as you request, but within what they perceive as good looking. The same concept applies to Steinman, but more extreme. Still, the people and splicers of Rapture appreciated Mr. Steinman's handiwork, and we can see this with Diane McClintock.
Dr. Steinman was very attentive. He told me that once the scar tissue was gone, he was gonna fix me right up, make me prettier than any girl I've ever seen. He's sweet, alright.
Now we'll be looking into unhealthy usages of his FI function. And oh boy, do we got a lot. We'll be starting off with how he forces his ideas of beauty onto unsuspecting patients and splicers.
You know, I didn't realize how much her face sags. Scalpel?
Excuse me?
Scalpel.
Doctor, she's not booked for a facelift.
Let's just come in here and...
Doctor, stop cutting. Doctor, stop cutting.
Speaking of splicers, when he doesn't have enough clientele and he wants to experiment, he will buy human-trafficked splicers from Sandra Cohen and forcefully reshape their faces into he thinks is beautiful. This often leads to their deaths. Steinman actively believes he's saving the people of Rapture from being ugly or normal looking. He does this by making their faces look abstract and asymmetrical, which is scientifically ugly. In an erotic fashion, it's pretty funny if you think of it like that. But not for his victims. It's not a laughing matter, since they're literally human canvases. Steinman doesn't even view himself as a plastic surgeon, but rather an artist who molds the bodies and faces into abstract art. His goal is to become the Pablo Picasso of plastic surgery, changing the way people view beauty.
I've spent my entire surgical career creating the same tired shapes over and over again. The upturned nose, the cleft chin, the ample bosom. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could do with a knife what that old Spaniard did with a brush?
We can often see this desire to be authentic and unique within NE and FI users who value differing from the rest of society. A brilliant example of that can be heard in an audio recording that Steinman had with Aphrodite. She told him what he wanted to hear.
I'm here to free you from the tyranny of the commonplace. I'm here to show you a new kind of beauty.
However, it's a vicious circle of a never-ending searching, since his NE function always wants to find alternate ways to improve on his views and ideas.
But is there not something better?
This means Steinman can never truly be satisfied. Even when he succeeds, he still wants more. And we can see that within his sensitivity to his perceived failures. Instead of dealing with them maturely, he lashes out like a toddler.
It won't stay. I want to make them beautiful, but they always turn out wrong.
And we'll be seeing more of that within his next function. His tertiary function is extroverted thinking. Dr. Steinman is ambitious, confrontational, perfectionistic, efficient, stubborn, and heavily relies on empirical data to understand the world. However, he also has a deadly problem. He constantly loops between his NE and TE functions. He does this obsessively. He continuously searches for the answers he wants without taking his own health into consideration, since his ideals and completing them is more important. This is a double-edged sword. It helped him achieve his goals via innovation within his respected field, and gained him an influential position within the medical community. And that's just the positive side of the sword. Let's get into the negative. J.S. Steinman went from a respected orthopedic and plastic surgeon to an unstable mad scientist and artist who is willing to use unwilling subjects as canvases.
What excuse do we have not to sculpt and sculpt and sculpt until the job is done?
The main factor that caused his downfall was his substance abuse of stimulants and Adam, and as an after effect, it destroyed his ability to reason with anyone other than himself.
With genetic modifications, beauty is no longer a goal or even a virtue. It is a moral obligation. Do we force the healthy to live with the contagious? Do we mix the criminal with the law-abiding?
He only has the ability to reason like a child, and throws temper tantrums towards anyone he views as ugly. This results in him trying to fix their ugliness via cosmetic surgery, or by killing them since he can't fix them. This is best experienced the first time you meet Dr. Steinman, who's operating on a splicer, whom he stabs for moving. And after that splicer is expired, he turns his attention on you, and decides that you're ugly, therefore you must die.
Ugly! 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 Look it!
Now before we go to our next segment, we have a bonus fact. Did you know that Dr. Steinman was the surgeon who changed Frank Fontaine's face into Atlas, and his henchman Reggie's face into Frank Fontaine?
You some kind of magician?
This action would change the history of Rapture, because Frank would fake his own death and become Atlas, and then take down Andrew Ryan. For such a minor character, Dr. Steinman's actions can definitely be felt throughout Rapture. And lastly, his inferior function is introverted sensing. Dr. Steinman almost completely neglects this function. He can only really be seen using it when he recalls past information when he's performing cosmetic surgery on individuals. And that was only when he was mentally sane, which didn't last very long. Overall, Dr. Steinman is an extreme example of an individual who only relies on his dominant NE and auxiliary FI functions, without consideration for his lower functions, and as a consequence of overdevelopment, he's lost touch with reality and only lives within his imagination.
I have what you're looking for. Just open your eyes, and when I see her, she cuts me into 1,000 beautiful pieces.
However, I won't leave this function empty-handed. I have a decent example of his SI neglect. We can find this example at the lower levels of the medical pavilion where ice covers the doorway, and inside of that ice, there's an audio diary from Bill McDonough, who warns Steinman to heat the pipes.
But you might want to cogitate on this. Ocean water is colder than a witch's tit. You don't heat the pipes freeze. Pipes freeze, pipes burst. Then Rapture leaks.
This is a monumental problem, because Rapture's underwater, and if the pipes burst, Rapture will flood and everyone will die. So yeah, Steinman didn't care, and he avoided the issue since it was rooted in the real world. And he doesn't care about reality, because reality doesn't exist within his mind. All that matters is what's inside his brain, not what is around him. And that leads to our conclusion, that Dr. Steinman is an unhealthy and insane ENFP. But we're not done with our insane doctor yet. We still have to go through his Enneagram because we want to understand what drove him to become the way he became. And I think this comes off as a little obvious, but he's an Enneagram 4, albeit a very unhealthy one. He wants to express, he wants to be different, unique. His fear is to be the mundane and normal.
I'm here to free you from the tyranny of the commonplace.
That's why he wants to make people beautiful and unique. Just the idea of being normal agitates him. This can also explain why he's so emotional and has such big mood swings, because he feels so goddamn much. The feels, man, they are real, at least for Dr. Steinman.
No!
This leads to another question. What's his wing? What's his co-pilot? What helps him drive? His desires? Well, I believe that wing would be 3, and here's why. Everything he does, other than expression, is for validation. He wants others to recognize his achievements. He is Pablo Picasso, but of plastic surgery. Look at me, everyone. I'm glorious. I could make the best art.
I am beautiful, yes. Look at me.
And that wraps up the complete analysis on Dr. Steinman, who's a 4-wing 3 with the tri-type of 471. In basic terms, Dr. Steinman is concerned about expressing himself and being unique and true to him. After he goes through that process, he wants to explore all the options to innovate his field. And lastly, he believes it's a moral obligation to be beautiful, and he will force that obligation whether you like it or not. And that wraps up this analysis. Now, would you kindly join my cult by pressing the subscription button? Have a very nice evening, day, or night.
Joke's on them, though. I'm a witch, and you can't kill me.